Immanuel Kant was one of the greatest philosophers in human history. His ideas transformed philosophy so deeply that many scholars describe his work as a turning point equal to the scientific revolution. Before Kant, philosophers argued endlessly about whether knowledge came from reason or from experience. Kant offered a new path, one that reshaped the way people think about truth, morality, freedom, and the limits of human understanding. Kant was born on April 22, 1724, in the city of Königsberg, in the Kingdom of Prussia, which is now Kaliningrad, Russia. He came from a modest family. His father was a skilled harness maker, and his mother was known for her intelligence, kindness, and deep religious faith. Although the family was not wealthy, Kant's parents valued education and encouraged him to pursue learning from an early age. As a young boy, Kant attended the Collegium Fridericianum, where he received a strict classical education. He later entered the University of Königsberg, where he studied philosophy, mathematics, physics, and theology. During his university years, he became fascinated by the discoveries of Isaac Newton and the philosophy of Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz. These influences shaped his early thinking, but Kant would eventually develop ideas unlike those of any philosopher before him. After the death of his father, financial difficulties forced Kant to leave the university before completing his studies. To support himself, he worked as a private tutor for several wealthy families. During these years, he continued reading, writing, and reflecting on some of the deepest questions about reality and human knowledge. Eventually, he returned to the university, completed his education, and began teaching. Kant spent almost his entire life in Königsberg. Unlike many famous thinkers, he rarely traveled. His daily routine became legendary. He woke up at nearly the same time every morning, lectured at the university, wrote for several hours, took his famous afternoon walk through the city, and returned home to continue his work. It was said that the people of Königsberg could set their clocks by seeing Kant walked past at the same hour every day. His disciplined lifestyle reflected his belief that reason and order were essential to a meaningful life. For many years, Kant published essays on science, astronomy, geography, and philosophy. However, his greatest achievement came later in life. In 1781, at the age of 57, he published Critique of Pure Reason, one of the most influential books ever written in philosophy. In this remarkable work, Kant asked a simple but profound question: how is knowledge possible? Instead of asking only what we know, he asked how the human mind makes knowledge possible in the first place. Before Kant, two major philosophical traditions dominated Europe. Rationalists believed that reason alone could reveal the deepest truths about reality. Empiricists argued that all knowledge comes from experience through the senses. Kant believed that both sides were partly right but also incomplete. He argued that knowledge begins with experience, but it does not arise entirely from experience. According to Kant, the human mind is not a passive receiver of information. Instead, it actively organizes and shapes everything we perceive. Our minds provide the structures through which we experience the world, including concepts such as space, time, and causality. This revolutionary idea became known as the Copernican Revolution in philosophy, just as Copernicus changed astronomy by showing that the Earth revolves around the Sun rather than the other way around. Kant suggested that objects of experience must conform to the structures of the human mind rather than the mind simply conforming to the external world. Kant also introduced the important distinction between the phenomenal world and the noumenal world. The phenomenal world is the world as it appears to us through our senses and mental structures. The noumenal world, often called the thing in itself, exists independently of our perception. Kant argued that although we can know appearances, we can never fully know things as they exist in themselves. This idea established clear limits for human knowledge and encouraged intellectual humility. But Kant's influence extended far beyond the theory of knowledge. His moral philosophy became equally famous. In 1785, he published Groundwork of the Metaphysics of Morals, where he introduced one of the most celebrated concepts in ethics, the categorical imperative. The categorical imperative is a universal moral principle. Kant argued that a person should act only according to rules that they could rationally wish everyone else to follow. In other words, before performing any action, one should ask whether it would be acceptable if every person acted in the same way. If the answer is no, then the action is morally wrong. For Kant, morality was not based on emotions, personal desires, or expected consequences. Instead, true morality arises from duty and respect for rational moral law. A good action is not good because it produces happiness or success. It is good because it is done for the right reason. Another central idea in Kant's ethics is the belief that every human being possesses inherent dignity. He argued that people should never be treated merely as tools for achieving someone else's goals. Every individual must always be respected as an end in themselves. This principle continues to influence modern discussions of human rights, justice, and personal freedom. Kant also wrote extensively about politics, religion, aesthetics, and peace. In his essay Perpetual Peace, published in 1795, he imagined a future in which nations would cooperate through laws and international institutions instead of resolving conflicts through war. Many historians believe that his vision anticipated ideas later reflected in organizations devoted to international cooperation. In Critique of Judgment, Kant explored beauty and art. He argued that the experience of beauty is neither purely objective nor purely subjective. Instead, aesthetic judgment reflects a unique harmony between imagination and understanding. His work laid the foundation for modern aesthetics and continues to influence philosophers, artists, and critics. Although Kant's writings are famous for their complexity, his central message remains surprisingly simple. Human reason is extraordinarily powerful, but it also has limits. We should seek truth with confidence while recognizing that not every mystery can be solved by the human mind alone. Kant continued teaching and writing into old age. As he grew older, his health gradually declined and his memory weakened. Nevertheless, his intellectual legacy had already transformed philosophy forever. Immanuel Kant died on February 12, 1804, in Königsberg at the age of 79. His reported final words were, "It is good." Today, Kant is remembered as one of the architects of modern philosophy. His influence can be found in ethics, political theory, psychology, law, education, cognitive science, and even artificial intelligence. Philosophers such as Hegel, Schopenhauer, Nietzsche, Husserl, and countless others developed their ideas in conversation with Kant's work, whether by building upon it or challenging it. More than 2 centuries after his death, Kant continues to remind us that philosophy is not merely about collecting answers. It is about learning how to ask better questions. His life demonstrates that disciplined thought can change the course of intellectual history, and his philosophy encourages us to examine not only the world around us, but also the remarkable capacities and limitations of the human mind itself.